From multiple mind-blowing video games to a collection of maps with thousands of details and even a cameo on the cult classic Sharknado, here are the things George R.R. Martin has been working on other than the Winds of Winter. But first, why is it taking so long? The show based on his series of books, A Song of Ice and Fire, has long ended. You might have heard of it, Game of Thrones. But here's the thing, the book series isn't done yet. There are 2 more to go. Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring have been 12 years in the making. Fans have speculated that might be a health reason, because the author hasn't disclosed anything about it as such. He did get COVID, but recovered well. Martin seems to be happening the most public case of writer's block. Hey, it happens. Besides, he's been working on other projects since he started writing Winds of Winter. The biggest of which is, of course, the HBO show Game of Thrones. George R.R. Martin's involvement with HBO's Game of Thrones is a major factor behind the delay. I mean, we all remember the hype surrounding the series, don't we? A whopping 16.5 million people watched the season 8 finale in 2019, and another 15 million caught up later. That's insane.
It's probably going to be a larger book than any of the previous volumes in the series.
Now, we know that George created the world and the characters of Game of Thrones. What you may not know is that he was also a writer on 4 episodes of the show from 2011 to 2014. Yep, that's right, Martin had a direct hand in bringing some of the most iconic scenes and dialogues from the series to life. But he did write some other stuff while the show was going on. After the 2nd season of the show, he released a boxed collection of 12 maps in 2012. Of course, from the world that he had created for A Song of Ice and Fire novels. The maps were beautifully illustrated by cartographer Jonathan Roberts. They covered everything from Westeros to Asshai, and this was just the beginning of the high demand for all things Thrones. If you're looking for the set, it's called The Land of Ice and Fire, maps from King's Landing across the Narrow Sea. Then there was the video game that was also released the same year. The Game of Thrones game I'm talking about here is not the one made by Telltale Games back in 2014. The one I'm referring to is the 2012 action role-playing game developed by Cyanide. Got it? Good.
Ah, Lady Marjorie. Aren't you looking lovely this evening?
Lord Tyrion. Your Grace?
Now, this game is based on the TV show and not the books as such. It even features the voice talent of 2 of the show's stars, Conleth Hill, who plays Lord Varys, and James Cosmo, who plays Jorah Mormont. But that's not even the best part. The game was actually written by Martin himself, so you know you're in for a gritty, immersive experience that stays true to the world and characters he created. The next year, he edited an anthology of short stories and novellas. That also included a novella set in Westeros called The Princess and the Queen that Martin wrote himself, and it's set some 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones. The anthology includes work by 21 different authors, including Brandon Sanderson, Jim Butcher, and Diana Gabaldon, and it's such an interesting set of stories. They all feature women as the main characters and explore the idea of women who are dangerous in some way or the other. Whether that means they're physically powerful, intellectually formidable, or simply willing to take risks that others aren't. The stories span multiple genres, from epic fantasy to urban noir.
That I've been intending to write for some time, and just one day the first chapter of Game of Thrones came to me. The scene where they find the direwolf pups in the summer snows.
Now this is a set of short stories I'd definitely like to see on TV. He also worked on another anthology called Old Mars. This was another set of short stories edited by Martin. Old Mars is a collection of retro-style science fiction stories set on the Red Planet. The stories are a bit of a throwback to the era of sci-fi before space exploration. It won the 2014 Locus Award and actually became very popular. The niche anthology introduced many of Martin's new fans to his works in other genres. If you want to check out more old school work by the author, check out some of the episodes he wrote on the Twilight Zone in the 1980s. There was one that he wrote called The Road Less Traveled, which was directed by Wes Craven. So good. But back to his more recent work. There was the Game of Thrones Ascent video game too. This one was written by 5 other writers too, along with Martin. Ascent was basically a mobile strategy game that was based specifically on the TV show. It basically allowed players to live out the cutthroat politics of Westeros, and the aim was to be the greatest house in the 7 Kingdoms. The game actually had over 9 million registered fans, and then one day in 2019, it was just gone.
You dare wield the wild power of dragons to vanquish your foes. Your influence will grow.
Obviously, fans were confused and disappointed, but Martin did collaborate with two of his superfans on another book. He wrote a companion book to A Song of Ice and Fire series. Even though the series wasn't complete, the author decided that he wanted to write a companion book to the series. He actually got the admins of the fan site Westeros.org to help them do this. These superfans actually collected all the historical references from his book. Martin then polished that up and added new material too. These sidebar stories actually became too much for the book, and parts of it had to be removed. But these parts made appearances in other anthologies like Dangerous Women, Rogues, and The Book of Swords. By now, the author was also making cameos on screen too. And my favorite one is the one on Sharknado. That's right, the great George R.R. Martin made an appearance on this sci-fi cult classic. The author made a cameo on Sharknado 3, oh hell no, as himself. Remember the storm sequence? The cameo was originally meant to be there, but was later moved. It featured Martin saying, "Winter's coming," to a bride next to him. In the clip, he gets eaten by a shark that tears through the projection screen. But that wasn't his only screen involvement during the time. The writer was an executive producer on several shows. It made sense to have him the mind behind the biggest TV show on your end credits.
From Santa Fe's original art house, the Jean Cocteau Cinema. So we have some questions from fans.
His popularity made him a lucrative choice for an upstart TV show. There's the Meow Wolf origin story from 2018. The same year, he also did Night Flyers and Dark Winds just last year. He also produced a short film called Night of the Cooters. The 34-minute movie was about a Martian invasion of a Texan town in the 1800s. It was basically an adaptation of a novel by Howard Waldrop. The movie was in the same stream as his short story anthologies Old Mars and Old Venus. It was basically an homage to classic pulp magazine stories of aliens and monsters that Martin loved reading as a child. But what really kept him busy this year was House of the Dragon. The TV show was proved to be a worthy successor of the super hit Game of Thrones. It's based on a 2018 book that traces the history of House Targaryen. It even won an Emmy for Best Drama Series after just one season. Much like the other Westeros histories, the book actually reads more like a history book, so it doesn't have the details and dramatic plot lines that he's had to develop for the TV show. The show was a hit as expected, with its premiere getting over 20 million viewers. And those were just some of the things Martin has been working on along with Winds of Winter.
It's probably going to be a larger book than any of the previous volumes in the series.
Ah, Lady Marjorie, aren't you looking lovely this evening?
Lord Tyrion. Your Grace?
That I've been intending to write for some time, and just one day the first chapter of Game of Thrones came to me. The scene where they find the direwolf pups in the summer snows.